Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Purple Way podcast. My name is Paris, and today I have the pleasure to talk to Andy Lang, the CEO and founder of Munny. Andy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, very good.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here as well. I really appreciate the time. Andy, I would love to start with your background. So tell us a little bit about Munny, its mission, purpose, and also what inspired you to start it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, money is a business that I'm deeply passionate about. It's something that I've tried previously, actually. So I'll give you a little bit of context into the background of the business. We, back in 2011, set up a company called Smart Lolly. The idea was to go into schools and educate kids about money and being smart with their money. We did that for a couple of years, semi-successfully, but it's very hard when you're working with schools to find some consistency. The curriculum is jam-packed full of stuff. So to actually get any level of consistency and structure takes a long time. But we did a couple of years working in Cheshire, Greater Manchester, Lancashire, worked with Prince's Trust and Manchester Fire Cadets, did lots of great work that was really, really good stuff and really passionate about it, but very hard to create a sustainable business when you've got schools that have a lack of time and a lack of money. So
Yeah.
we had to put it on the shelf for a few years and just think about a better way of approaching it. So it's a business that I've had in my mind for the last 15 years, to be honest.
Wow.
And my background has been within financial services since leaving school, went straight into a finance company and have been involved in personal finance ever since. And really with the catalyst for creating this business was seeing lots of people get it wrong, seeing lots of people head into debt management plans, IVAs, bankruptcies, and just thinking there's got to be a better way. And that's really what we try and do here at Munny now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's such an important element. Like, of course, as a society, we are surrounded by money. And like a
hmm
lot of people, as you say, like, don't get it right. And I think, like, if you can start with education, and educating people in financial literacy, I think it's like a good first step, towards the right
Absolutely.
direction. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's some key ages as well, and we'll probably get into this as we're talking, but
Hmm.
I don't always agree that primary school and early age children need to learn lots about it. I think some simple concepts are enough because ultimately until you kind of have an income, whether that's 14, 15, 16-year-old, until you've got your own money coming in, those concepts really you can't apply them. So I do think there's some key milestones where you should be stepping in and delivering this kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, 100%. Let's say dive in. So basically, I really want to talk about budgeting. And I think
Mhm.
budgeting is kind of the principle. Um, but then also, I would like to ask you, why do you believe budgeting is the foundation of personal finance?
So one of the mantras, I guess, that we have is know your numbers. I must
Mm,
say it 100 times a day, but it's so true. If you don't know your numbers, then you're going to be racked with maybe anxiety, maybe you're putting the numbers off. You don't want to know the numbers, but
yeah.
ultimately, one of our big things is if you know your numbers, you can make smarter choices. I mean, you just said a moment ago that money's everywhere. Money's something we all have to deal with, and every decision involves money ultimately. Whether you get the bus or an Uber, whether you have a nice meal deal or you just get a soup, or whether you make, every single decision that you make on a daily basis is influenced in some way by money. So knowing your numbers is vital, and that plays a big part then in your day-to-day finances and how much control you have, and therefore how much peace of mind you have. So that's why I think it's so important to budget.
And in that, right, like what would you put as a second? Let's say, it's a pyramid, right? Budgeting is the first thing. What would you put as after budgeting, after you know your numbers, what would you put second, third, and fourth, and fifth, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I think we talk about the here and now very much. So just day to day, if you've not got control of your day to day stuff, then you're going to have stress levels. You're not going to sleep properly. You're going to be
Mhm.
anxious, and we see that a
Yeah.
lot. We see a lot of people that are just treading water ultimately, and that's kind of that first level, that base level. Beyond that, really, the next step would be to build an emergency fund, something you can fall back on should there be a problem.
Yep.
So, if you, for example, have a tyre blowout, or like my car failed its MOT just yesterday, so I've got to find £300 for brake pads. If I didn't have an emergency fund, then that might cause me some problems. That might cause me to use an overdraft or a credit card. Or so the fact that you build your emergency fund, I think, gives you that little bit of a fallback option. And
Hmm.
the recommendations are that you try and build an emergency fund that's 3 months worth of your costs. So if you know that your costs are £1,000 a month, then let's get 3K put away in a savings account. Now, there'll be people listening to this that'll be like, oh, I can't get 3 grand saved up. That's I'm struggling to get a few £100s saved up. But there's certain strategies and things that you can do that will make that easier. And tools like Roundup, when you spend
Mm,
money, your Roundups goes into your savings. Things like that really help build that emergency fund, which is that second level, if you like.
yeah.
Above that, I would say then it's about thinking about your future and
Mm,
protecting your
that's
financial
great.
future. I genuinely think that if there was more attention and focus put on pensions in people's 20s, then we wouldn't have the level of pension anxiety that we have for people that are now starting to retire. That lots of people are retiring and having to go back into work because they just haven't got enough.
Yeah.
So really that sort of financial future bit, which
Mm,
people tend, I put it off, people put it off, they go, well, I'm not old enough for a pension yet, but ultimately the time is your friend when it comes to your pension. So the earlier you can start, the better. And really, once you've got those three, it's then
mhm.
about your key aims as a person or as a family. It may be that you want to buy a property. It may be that you want to start a family. It might be you want to start a business. So that the sort of the levels at the top of that pyramid are all about your choices and your goals, your ambitions, your aspirations. Whereas the other three, I think, are really foundation
Mm.
and sort of giving you a really solid base to build from.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I love how you brought like kind of like, if you don't have the foundations, like for example, like the emergency fund, which I really, from a personal experience, I have been in the situation that I had
Yeah,
no money left, or like maybe I had like, 1,500, 2,000 pounds that I had to use. And after that, I was like,
yeah,
thank God I had that money, because, or else I would have to ask my parents' money, my friends' money, or go into credit, to be honest, which I
yeah.
think majority of people go into if they don't have family or friends to support them, right? But yeah, like I
Hmm.
think money can also bring you anxiety, and I think that's something I would love to talk to you later on about as well.
Okay.
And where would you put investing, like for example, like maybe that will be the fourth kind of pillar, right? Like after you have the foundation, you can think of
Yeah.
also investing your
I
money.
think it slots in that third, fourth pillar where you've
Yeah,
got your pension and your sort of your foundation future boxed off, whether that's a workplace pension, state pension, a mixture of both.
yeah,
And if you're not employed, then a private pension option. And then in terms of investing, that all comes down to what spare cash you have, your risk appetite, what you fancy getting involved in. I had a really good coaching session with someone recently who had a fantastic portfolio. There was a couple of
mm,
£100,000 in this portfolio, which is much more than we normally see. And
yeah,
they had it spread fairly well. They had some Meta, there's some Tesla, they had S&P 500. They had some really good stuff with their money. But what they were doing was they were, with about 20K of that 200, they were being really risky. They bought a load of
okay.
Trump coin and they lost about 15K on Trump coin because they were
Jesus.
following some social media stuff. And ultimately, what we
Yeah,
found out was that this person's risk appetite was really not to be putting so much on the line, but maybe like
yeah,
5K they were okay losing because it's that level of investment and that type of investment is a little bit like gambling.
yeah,
You're reading the sort of signs and going, well, do I think it's going to work or not? And
yeah,
at that level, it's big risk but big rewards. So,
yeah. No, I guess like a lot of people, they can get like, influenced by what they see on social media. Like, as you said, like Trump coin, or like just in general, more cryptocurrencies. And they think that like, someone put 250 pounds, next day they're a millionaire, and they think that they can achieve the same returns. And they put their 200 pounds, next day it's like 50 pounds. And they're like,
yeah.
what's going on? Yeah.
Listen,
I have.
I've done it. During COVID,
Yeah.
there was a couple of investments that I made. Not huge money, luckily, but
Yeah.
people were telling me these guys are going to get a government contract for the COVID jab, and these guys are going to get this and this. And I was like, oh, okay. So I put £1,000 into Tiziana Life Sciences, thinking this was the next big Pfizer type project.
Yeah.
It's now worth about £3.50, my £1,000. So
Beautiful.
I've been there myself where
Yeah.
I've followed the hype, and
Yeah.
chuck money after it. So it is really important, again, to number one, get some proper advice. If you're going to invest, get some regulated advice from an expert and ideally someone independent. And also do some reading up about it. Make sure you do your own research. I didn't. I was just following the social media posts and going, well, there, I'll put that on the
Yeah.
line. At that point in time, it was a gamble that I was happy to make. Now, would I
Yeah.
make the same one? Probably not. I'd probably put a lot less on the
Yeah.
line than I did.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of like also like that's how we learn, right? At the end of the day, we are humans and we learn from our experiences and our mistakes and etc. But like the important thing is to not do it again. If you do
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
again and again, then okay, you have a
Yeah.
something else is wrong. But let's say, for example, because your company also does coaching, right? One-to-one coaching, but then also with
Yep.
employers and organizations, but then also, if I'm correct, you still go to schools, right? As part of,
Yep.
yeah, education. Perfect.
Yep.
So let's say, for example, we are in a one-to-one coaching session, right? I guess here maybe we have to split, who am I as a person? But where would we begin, right? Like, what are like some 5 questions that you would ask me,
Mhm.
for me to improve my financial situation?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I mean, during the booking process,
Mhm.
a few fields that you would fill in as part of booking your one-to-one financial
Yeah.
coaching session, and in there you would be able to choose from a list of topics you wanted to focus on. You'd have a text box where you can type in if any specific problems or specific areas you want to focus on. We've had, I'll give you a couple of examples of recent
Yeah.
ones without kind of any confidentiality. There was a gentleman that approached us in December for a one-to-one coaching session about mortgages. It was
Mhm.
as vague as that. We just knew it was mortgage related. When we got onto the coaching session, it turns out he had an eviction notice and was about to lose his property, and we had to kind of step in and help him through the process. So we're now on session number 3, and
Mhm.
he's now keeping his house, and he's able to pay off his current mortgage provider. But that was a really kind of high stressful, high pressure situation. But he wasn't comfortable sharing that on the onboarding process. He just put mortgages. But the more information we get ahead of time, the more we're able to then choose the right coach for that situation, because we've got coaches that specialize in different areas.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And also, ultimately, our first focus would be: do you know your numbers? What's your current day to day? And we would just work through the process. It's very kind of system driven in terms of: does your budget work for you? Are you missing any payments? Are you in control of your day to day finances? And if you are, great. Let's tick that box. Let's move on and let's talk about: okay, are you saving any money? And that 50-30-20 concept I know we've mentioned before.
Mhm.
How are you in terms of that alignment? Are you at 85-10-5? Are you at 90-10-0? Lots of people are way out of kilter with that 50-30-20 model. And ultimately, it's quite aspirational. So we don't expect people to
Yeah.
fall naturally into 50-30-20. Ultimately, most people are at 70-75-20, and then they're saving whatever they can, once they've enjoyed their month. So
Yeah. Like with finance, some stuff is very simple, right? Like, for example, like I had this conversation with a friend of mine recently that he and his partner, his wife wants to buy a property, right? And they sat down together and they said, okay, what's our monthly budget? What do we spend? What can we eliminate, subscription wise, or maybe change our broadband and etc. And this is
mhm.
something, as you say, like, the 50-30-20 principle, right? Yes, sometimes it's not achievable, especially if you're a young person, like, a student, right? And you work part-time, probably that's not feasible. But like, I find myself for the first time being able to be on that level, like the 50-30-20. But sometimes, and that's kind of maybe my next question, is like, why do you think people find it difficult to stick with their financial goals?
It's a good question, and actually, I always relate this to fitness goals because it's something
Okay.
that I'm quite focused on right now. But when it comes to financial goals, they have to mean something to you. They have to be something that you're emotively attached to. There may have to be a little bit of pain element in there that you've maybe failed to achieve it in the past. And if we just look at fitness goals alongside that, it's the exact same. So for example, right now, I have a fitness goal and I'm trying to lose a certain amount of weight. And rather than say I want to lose 2 stone, which is this huge target and miles away, I've just said, well, I want to lose £2 a week. And I'm going to measure myself every Wednesday and check that I've lost the £2 per week. Now, doing that and being mentally aware of that every week, that accountability part of it, it means
Mhm.
that I'm less likely to go, oh, I'll have the cake. Who cares? But if I were just saying I'm going to lose 2 stone, then I'll think, well, I've got ages to go anyway. I'll just have the cake. So sometimes breaking those big financial goals down, having those accountability sessions, whether it's with a accountability partner, your own
Mhm.
partner, your wife, girlfriend, husband, whoever it may be, it's really important just to check in on those goals and break them down into small pieces. the old concept of eating an elephant is piece by piece. You can't just shove it all in, and it's the same
Yeah.
idea. If you want to save for a property, it might seem like such a huge milestone and so far away. But if you say, well, I need to save £200 a month because that gets me where I need to get to in the next 2 years, you'll be less likely to start spending the money willy nilly if you know the goal means something to you and you've broken it down.
Mhm.
It has to feel achievable. It has to feel realistic.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have heard, or like I have heard, like the saying, like pay yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Like, would you pay yourself first? Like, if it is saving £250 a month, would you take that money straight away before you pay your bills and etc., and put it away in a savings account or something like that?
So a big part of the knowing your numbers kind of concept that we have and working with people on their budgets is building for them or guiding them towards having an A and B banking structure where their money
Mhm.
hits an A account. And I'll give you an example in a minute of how I do this, but your money hits your A account, all your bills then come away from your A account. What's left goes to your B account, and you can then transfer your savings to your C account. So you're breaking down your money and you're almost forcing yourself to live towards a more 50-30-20 concept. Now, the numbers might not be the same, but the
Yeah.
concept is there. So, for example, with mine, money hits my account, my NatWest account, all my bills are on my NatWest account. The money that's required for those stays in there. The excess gets transferred to my Starling account. And in Starling, I've got a spending account and a savings account. So my money then gets split that way. So I've created a situation where my banking works for me. And that's a really big part of it. A lot
Yeah.
of people have sort of misguided loyalty to a bank because the bank's been around for 400 years maybe, or because their parents use that bank. What's really, really important is you want to use a bank that does what you need it to do. Now, that might mean different features, it might mean a certain structure, but A and B banking or A, B and C banking, for me, is a good way of building those walls between your money, and it helps you filter.
And as you say, like for example, like with finance, a lot of banks nowadays, let's say for example with savings account, right? A lot of banks do not give you a high interest rate, and like
Mhm.
you find people loyal.
Yeah, the concept of loyalty is misplaced across most of what we do, really, as society. I think, car insurance is a prime example where there's no loyalty in car insurance. You get your renewal price through and it's double what you've just paid last year. And that's because there's no loyalty in the financial world, if you like. And it's the same with banking. Again, with NatWest, I've got a savings account that gives me 1.7%. But I've got an account elsewhere that gives me 4.8%. It's a different bank. I haven't banked with them before, but they're giving me a better rate. So
Yeah.
there's no loyalty there. So it's really important to go and find an account that works for you. But I do get that sometimes the accounts that are out there, there's some where you've maybe never heard of them. You're like, well, I don't know who they are and I don't trust them. But you just need to make sure that they're FSCS covered so that you've got that protection up to sort of 85,000. You want to make sure you've got that. We partner with and we've worked with Raisin. They're a platform where you can compare savings accounts. It's worth having a look
Oh,
at Raisin,
yeah.
spelt the same way you spell the dried fruit. And what they do is they provide you a comparison of savings accounts that are high interest rate, tells you who the bank are, how they're covered by FCA and FSCS. And that way, then you can compare different savings accounts. And some of those you might fix in for 5 years, where your money can't be moved for 5 years. Some are instant access. There's lots of different accounts you can choose from. And obviously, the longer your money's sat somewhere and the more protected it is, the better rates you're going to get. So it's
Yeah.
certainly worth looking.
Yeah, 100%. I do agree with you. Let's go back to the kind of coaching session, right? Let's say, for example, like, how can we think of good financial goals to have? You know what I mean? Again, let's say, you're 2025, you just finished university. Let's speak to that kind of audience and then move on to the next one.
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
for a young person, right? How would you go about finding, what a good financial goal is?
I think for that, I think back to when I was that age as well, and I think
Yeah.
financial independence was quite big for me. So I
Mm.
wanted my own place, I wanted my own
Mm.
car, and I wanted to have my own independence. So it's
Mm.
about figuring out what does that look like. Does that look like renting or buying in terms of car? Does that look
Yeah.
like finance or buying a car outright or leasing a car? Like, what are the goals that you have to create that financial independence? And that's for me what a lot of 20 to 30-year-olds are really fighting for is trying to get that financial independence.
Yeah.
We've seen some stats that show recently that average first-time buyers are now 32 years old. So it's just not happening for people in the 20s on average now because it's so much more expensive. So
Yeah.
sometimes people will see how much the houses are in their area and think, I'll never own a house, and just almost accept it Whereas I think it's really important, especially the earlier as possible, that you get a grip of what is achievable and how do you work towards it, and have that aspiration.
And then with like, maybe 30 to 40, maybe their financial goals is about, what would you say, like family or like, paying the mortgage, and like then you go to different
Yeah,
completely goals.
I'm very stereotypical. I got married at 30, first child at 32, second child at 34. Now look about 60. So I'm very stereotypical. But yeah, for me,
Yeah.
it was okay. We need to build and protect and nest. So it was about, let's get a house. Let's make sure the kids are set up. Let's get a kids' ISA set up and put some money away for the kids. And it was all about protecting our family bubble was our big focus once we'd got to that kind of 30 mark. Very stereotypical of me. But I think
Yeah.
that is the demographic for a lot of people. Regardless of their choices, I think a lot of people get into their 30s and go, "Okay, I need to now make sure I've got what I need now. I need to protect myself." And that's also related to pensions. I didn't start my pension till late 30s. I should have started it 10 years prior, because it would have made a huge difference. And it comes
Yeah.
back to kind of financial future and being prepared.
Yeah, no, it definitely, like even now, like I started this job like 2 months ago, and like I put like a extra 2%. Like it's not a lot,
Hmm.
but like an extra 2% into my pension. The employer matches that, so happy days. Now it's like
Yeah,
14% of my annual salary goes into the pension, right?
which is great.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
Right,
it is. Yeah,
I
it
will see
is.
when I'm
It's brilliant.
65. um but no, I do agree with you, and I think, like, for example, I do wish I had that financial advice. Let's say, for example, when I was 20, I have said that
Hmm.
to some of my friends. It's like, imagine if you're 20 years old and you put money every month. By the time that you're 30, and maybe a financial goal for you is to buy a property, you will probably have the money to, for the deposit. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people don't create like that future plan, as you said, which I think it's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. It's hard.
Yeah.
I speak from experience that pension wise, I didn't really think about it too much until I'd had both children and realised, oh, I'm getting old. I need to think about my old age now. Whereas one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and you mentioned a minute ago about the right kind of age for this.
Yeah.
I think we should be looking to create some sort of money license that is similar to a driving license.
Mm.
And as people reach that 16, 17 kind of age bracket, they go through a program, like you do with your
Mm.
driving test. You go through
Yeah.
driving lessons, has a perception test, theory test. You then get your provisional license, and you then go and do a driving test, and you then go and you get passed in the practical test. If you
Yeah.
followed that methodology and you applied that to finance at 16, 17, people would enter the financial world at 18 being able to borrow money, but knowing exactly what to do and not to do through a standardized program, which is what we have with driving. That's why our roads are safe. So
Yeah.
I really think that if this government or the next were able to build this money license program, which could
Yeah.
be supported by all the private firms that we're aware of. There's lots of people that are out there trying to do what we do.
Yeah.
I think it'd be an amazing project, and it would revolutionise, the future
100%.
generations' financial capabilities.
100%. I couldn't agree more with you. Yeah, I would fully support that. Like, or I fully support that. Like, yeah, I do agree, and we will come to that as well. Like, I do want to speak about like financial literacy as well, and yeah, something like that would be amazing. And also, especially like in other countries as well. Like, I'm thinking of Greece. I am from Greece, right? So it's like people should know how money works, and I think a lot of
Hmm.
people don't know how money works, and that's why we have so many issues and problems, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, etc. No, it's very interesting. um is there any advice that you would give couples, or like, people who live together, on how to organize their budget and also their finances?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is communication.
Mm.
We see, and again, in a former life as a debt advisor, I saw a huge lack of communication. So we'd have situations, this might sound extreme, where there'd be one of the people in the relationship would be upstairs, for example, in a cupboard on the phone to us, and their partner's downstairs and they're whispering on the phone because they're scared that their partner's going to find out, about their situation. So we had some really extreme situations where they just, never mind not communicating, they were actually hiding stuff from each other. So, for us, it's really important that when we speak to someone, we ask them, okay, what about your partner? How do they fit into all of this? You know, are they
Yeah.
aware of your financial situation? Do you have any visibility? Sitting down and talking about money with your partner is so important. Even if you keep things separate, an awareness of the numbers is vital. It's really, really important.
Yeah. No, 100%. I do agree with you. And I think it's also, again, like through my own experience, like, living with well, this is in the past, right? So, with my ex girlfriend, like, I did try to tell her, like, for example, like, let's have like a joint account, pay our bills from there. And then also we kind of like, we can organize better our finances, right? And again, I think it goes back to financial literacy. A lot of people, because they don't know about money, they just take an action that is not really correct. And then if they're with their partner, they don't want to say it out of embarrassment, out of guilt. And it's like, they don't talk about it. And they just
Hmm.
have to live with that financial burden.
Yeah, and you also find that people with very different spending habits end up getting together. You know, I'm in the boat where I'm a saver, my wife is very much a spender,
Yeah.
and the whole yin and yang. But that happens so much more than you'd realise that we almost find the opposites and opposites attract, and we'll go, well, she loves to spend, I love to save, and it doesn't always work that way. But we
No.
do see lots of people with very different behaviors, learned behaviors ultimately from their upbringing and from education they've had, whether it be in the real world or formal education. Lots of people with very different behaviors around their money and their money habits.
Yeah, yeah. It's quite nice because, like, for example, there's an American guy, I can't remember his name, and he does finances and he has like a Netflix show, and he goes to couples and kind of fixes their finances, and then he has
Yeah.
sessions with them and etc. And you see examples there that couples do, married couples don't even speak about their finances, and they just have them separate. And I'm like, I don't know, like, personal opinion, I don't think I would be able to be with my future wife and not have common financial goals, or like not speak what we each spend.
Yeah, well, the most important decision that you're going to make in your life is choosing your life partner. You know, that's what I've
Yeah.
always been told, and it's so true because their aspirations, their goals, that what motivates them, what they're driving towards, if that's not aligned to yours, they're not really a life partner. You know, they're not maybe the right person for you. It's really important. You can be different people and have different interests, but when it comes to your common goals, your goals for your family unit, they have to be aligned.
Yeah.
And we see time and time again, we speak to people where one of the couple, they want to drive forward, get a bigger house, maybe get a bigger car, go on bigger holidays. The other person in the couple is quite comfortable and quite content and not really got the aspiration to do that, and it can cause some real problems.
Yeah.
Um, but it does all come down to that communication and having really open conversations. You don't necessarily have to share bank accounts. You don't have to, cross pollinate in every single way. We don't. Myself and my partner have
Mhm.
our own accounts. We transfer money into a joint. The joint pays the bills. We have our own money then in our own accounts. We have other stuff that we do joint, other stuff that we do separate. But all of it's communicated, all of it's visible, all of it's
Yeah.
on the table for discussion. None of it's hidden. And I think that's really important. Is that open communication.
Yeah. No, 100%. You guys have also now an application, right? So we were talking just briefly before we started recording. You have one app that is free to download for people, where they can check their kind of like put down their costs, right? And like, get like the budget, right? And I
Yeah.
think you also have a paid now application where people can download it.
Yeah, so there's two things we've worked on over the last 12 to 18 months to create a more digital asset and a bit more focused on providing support to people when they want it, because not everyone's able to turn up to a webinar or a workshop because of their shift patterns or their work or what they do. And some of the companies that we go and support, one in particular that we've worked with quite a while now, we've got about 4,000 staff across 4 different sites. We'll go on
Wow.
site for a few days, but a lot of the staff are working on machinery, they're out driving trucks. They're not able just to come and sit and listen to us for an hour because their work dictates that they have to be busy and they have to be doing whatever they're doing away from site. What we've tried to do is create tools that will help those individuals that aren't able to make those kind of sessions. One of them's free, as you mentioned, which is our app. So the app is on iOS and Android. It's just under Munny, Munny. It's got a budgeting calculator on there, pension calculators, compound interest calculators, and other bits of useful information. The good thing about the budget is when you fill it all in, it then gives you a comparison to the 50, 30, 20, and it categorizes your spending for you. So a big pie charts pop up and it'll tell you how close or how far away you are from
Yeah.
50, 30. Maybe you don't want to know, but it will certainly tell you how close or far away you are. And then the other thing that we've spent a lot of time developing is our virtual money coach, which is called which is short for Empower, because that's what it does. It empowers people. And that's only available through a paid subscription, which is through businesses. So we're working with companies who are going to pay and are paying for and then giving licenses to all their staff. We've made it super affordable. So up to 500 staff, it's £500 a month. Very, very simple. So if you've got 400 staff, 500 staff, you pay £500 a month and all your staff get access to And then is your pocket expert. You can access it from any device 24/7 and you can get financial guidance and coaching through whenever you need it, how you need it, about any topic. But it's all financially related. And that's been 12, 18 months in the making. Just behind the wall here, there's about 7 or 8 tech guys that have been working on that for the last 12 months. And we're really proud of what we've achieved. And we're launching that as of January 2025. So that's out there now in the market. And it's good. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think we need more applications like that where you have the virtual money codes because that's another thing, right? Like with social media and etc. Like you have a lot of people who get advice from social media and not experts, and it's like you don't know what to believe or you believe the wrong information. Whereas there are applications out there where, you can get financial advice made by experts.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the social media one's tricky. I was actually doing a bit of research the other day. I'm not on TikTok. I'm too old for TikTok, but I was having a look at TikTok and I was looking at some of the videos on there, some of the accounts on there, and it was pretty frightening because there was a couple of videos that I looked at where an individual in front of the camera was saying, "Listen, get your debts written off. I've got a great tool you can use. Get all your debt written off. Click this button," and ultimately it was just a company selling IVAs, which is an insolvency product, and the product is useful for the right kind of people, but it's not a mass market product. It's for people that really need it and need debt writing off. But they were doing that because they get paid a lot of money to sell that product. So I watched the video and I looked at some of the comments. There was 5,000 comments on there, which blew my mind at the level of engagement this video was getting. And all the comments were, "Great, can you DM me? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it." And really what they need to get is proper advice about all of the different products that are available, not just the one product. You've got companies out there like Step Change, Money Wellness, Payplan, some fantastic charity and government funded organizations that will provide you advice on all of the products that are out there, not just sell you one of them. And I think it's quite dangerous. There's some great stuff on social media, some fantastic influencers there. I'm definitely not that, but there's some great people out there that are doing some great work. But there's also those people that are almost portraying themselves as a sort of financial influencer, but ultimately they're just selling a product. And it's hard to differentiate between the two. How you're supposed to know ultimately.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. And I think that's where financial literacy comes into place. And this is, I would love to move on that one. And I want to ask you, right, on your website, so you have the statement, financial empowerment is a fundamental right that should be accessible to all. So kind of maybe coming as a devil's advocate here, do you think it's accessible to everyone?
No, I don't think it is ultimately. I think if we were to break down certain milestones and categories, I think schools are trying really hard. We've worked with schools for, as I say, back since 2011, and schools have really tough budgets to work to. I'm a school governor now of 2 different schools that I work really closely with, and there's no money in the pot. We can barely afford gravel for the car park. So there's a real issue where schools don't have the right level of funding available to pay for professionals to come in and do it. And then there's also the issue that the curriculum is jam-packed, that every single minute of every day is accounted for. So I don't really know how teachers are supposed to find the time or carve out the time to deliver an extra piece of information. There's some great organisations out there. We work with a couple like My Bank, Red Start, who are great organisations funded usually through charitable donations and able to work with schools for free. But again, it's like, how do you scale that? You know, there's so many schools out there. How do you make sure you're getting around to all of them? And then when you move on from schools and you think about, well, what about workplaces? Some workplaces are trying really hard, and we work with a lot of workplaces through some of our partnerships, and they're trying to put employee well-being into it, but they're having to fill a gap that was left really from the education process. And
Yeah,
it depends if your employer's interested in that or not. You know, your employer might not really care about making sure you've got all those tools. What they care about is the bottom line and are they profitable? You know, so
yeah,
it's difficult. And then we see, I guess, I wouldn't call it the darker side, that's probably been a bit dramatic, but we see a side where certain firms will portray that they're giving education, but ultimately what they're doing is selling products on the back of it. And you know,
Jesus Christ. Yeah,
they'll spend 30 minutes scaremongering you about not having insurance and then sell insurances, or you
yeah,
know, you've not got your pension. Great news, we do pensions. You know, and
yeah,
I've sat in and watched a few sessions where I've just felt like it wasn't really independent education. That was more of a
yeah,
pitch about a product that they're selling, and it's hard. You know, it's a tough place to try and get the right guidance, the right coaching, the right education. But it's one thing that we're really focused on is being an independent
yeah.
education business.
Yeah, as you said before, for example, like, the financial license, as you would have like a driving license, right? Like a test and theory, is such a great idea. And of course, like, here we are, two people talking. It's a great idea, but of course, like, will the government do it? You know what I mean? Like, of course, like, the grand scheme of things. But I think even though it would be an amazing idea, then you have to, mobilize a lot more
Hmm.
people, councils, government officials, whatever, to do something like that. But like, it just makes sense, right?
Well,
Yeah.
the good thing is there are movements taking place right now. So we're working with the LFBF, London Foundation for Banking and Finance. They were backed by the Bank of England, and we're part of the steering committee that are meeting regularly. I've been down to London now 2 times in the last sort of 6 weeks for meetings
Mhm.
where we're talking about the UK financial capability and how do we drive our financial capability as a country. What can we do to improve it? The idea of the money license is our idea. That's something I'm
Nice.
really proud of. So we're pushing that as a concept. You know, I
Yeah.
get from an execution point of view, how do you do that? That was such a
Yeah.
huge task. But when I think about it more and more and more, it makes so much sense, and it's such
Yeah.
perfectly timed at that 16, 17 kind of age.
100%.
So yeah, we're pushing it. We're on the panel. We're part of the committee. We're having meetings, and our voice is being heard. And we're really hopeful that working more collaboratively, I think that's one of the key things,
Hmm.
is going to be driving some of these solutions forward. Because there's lots of companies out there that are really trying to do the right thing, and they're really trying to help financial education and financial literacy, but maybe they're all doing it slightly more independently. So what we're trying to do now is bring people together and work more cohesively to deliver
Yeah.
something that has real impact.
Yeah, 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 and definitely it would. Like, I think it definitely would have an impact. And I really want to ask you that, like, because you have been in the business or in the financial educational industry for quite a few years now, right? If I'm correct, more than 15 years?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
am I? Yeah. So, do you think there's a shift in people's mindset, or perhaps like the younger generation, high school, students, that they are more interested in financial literacy? Is there a shift in the society per se to learn more about it?
They're they're very much more aware of money just generally. So I always use my nephews as examples because they're 12 and 14. So they're really kind
Mhm.
of at an age where money's becoming part of their life. I look at me at 12, 14, and I was playing on my Sega Mega Drive, you know, Revenge of Shinobi or whatever game it was I was playing. And
Yeah.
they're playing on Fortnite or they're playing on Roblox. And that involves money. It involves in-app purchases or in-game purchases. So they're
Yeah.
very aware. We had none of that. None of what we did was paid for. It was just coins on the screen. None of it was really an actual transaction. Whereas at 14 years old, my nephew knows how much budget he's got to spend on Roblox this month versus Fortnite this month, and he can pick and choose where he puts his money. That for me is so much more involved than we were at that sort of age when it comes to finances. So
Yeah.
they're spending money earlier, spending lots of it earlier, and therefore having to be more aware of it and
Hmm.
starting to understand, well, how do we get more of it? I've run out. How do I get more of this thing?
Yeah.
So, you know, that really I think will help just naturally, because it's also tough to engage at 12, 13, 14, to engage them in education. You know, they're going to be bored out of their mind if you don't make it
Yeah.
engaging. So maybe actually using things like Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft is the other one
Yeah.
that they're obsessed with. Maybe using those games and using the environments they're in, go to where they are and educate them in those games. Maybe that's the better way to approach it.
Yeah. No, 100%. I do agree with you because like I was on that kind of like generation with League of Legends for myself where like, you had your coins after every game and etc. And of course like, you had to spend it or like, you were thinking of what kind of like, player you wanted to purchase or like what kind of skin you would want to purchase and etc. So, yeah, it does make sense. But I'm also happy, like as a 29-year-old guy now that like, the younger generation is a little bit more aware of like
Yeah,
money in
absolutely.
general. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and,
definitely.
and, and, and TikTok and TikTok Shop and the ability to earn money just by having followers. We didn't have that. I definitely didn't. I know I'm older than you, Paris. We didn't have the ability to set up an online account, do some videos, get some followers, get paid for that. That was just never really on my radar because it just didn't exist. But
Yeah,
we've got Henry who does our social media for us. Henry's 18, and
mhm.
he had 100,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. 100,000
Wow.
subscribers at
Yeah,
15 years old. He was getting paid at 15 from YouTube because of the videos he was producing. So,
wow.
that level of exposure to being able to earn money and to
Yeah,
generate almost a business at
yeah,
15 years old is just insane. And that's what technology has given us. Me and my generation didn't have that. We were
no.
too busy playing and
Yeah,
naively just got
yeah,
thrust into the financial world.
yeah. No, definitely. Like, of course, like there's such a difference in the generations. Every generation is a little bit more aware, a little bit more, yeah, like a little bit different, right? But like on that, something that like I wanted to speak and get your perspective, right? Like someone who has been dealing with money for a very long time now, right? What's your opinion on the hustle culture? Like, for example, like, the ambitious kids that want to make money, but
Mhm,
also they see money as the end goal. And this is something I am debating right now. Like, when I was
mhm,
25, it was all about money. I really want to earn a lot of money. Whereas now I have taken a step back and I'm like, no, 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 it's not all about the money. It's about having a stress free life, because
mhm.
what's the point of working if I don't have the time to enjoy the money that I make, right? What's your take on maybe like the hustle culture that maybe exists right now? And like a
Yeah,
lot of, kids want to make money and like they're very money
yeah.
driven.
To be honest, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So I, for example, was very much work hard, work hard, work hard, 12-hour days, 13-hour days. In my early 20s, I would work 9 till 9 for the company I was working at. It was all very bonus related and I wanted more
Mhm.
money, more money, more money. I didn't really attach the money to anything, so it became quite meaningless quite quickly, but I didn't really attach it to any kind of personal goals. I think that's quite an important thing to do. But you're
Mm.
absolutely right. What you start to realize at a certain point, and for some people this is super early, this is early 20s. For others, this is really late or maybe never. But it's about the fact that your money and your time are the things that you're giving up. If
Yeah.
you trade in all of your time for money, but time's the only thing that you can't just get more of.
Yeah.
And I think the older you get, and the sort of more the more things you have to lose, you start having children, start getting a house, you start building your own bubble, the more you realize that time is fast. Time goes really quick. My daughter just turned 8 recently. It
Yeah.
feels like only moments ago she was 4, and it's like
Yeah.
boom, like she's 8. So from my perspective, over probably the last 10 years, my big focus has been on that balance between, okay, I want money and I need money to have more choices, but I
Yeah.
don't want to have those choices be at the total sacrifice of time with my family and the important people. So it's about trying to find a balance, which I think for most people is really difficult because ultimately, for a lot of people, if you want to earn lots of money to have the choices, you've got to work really hard. So
Yeah.
that's where I think, especially in your early 20s, putting that graft in and driving yourself as much as you can will ultimately put you in a much better position a little bit later on, i.e., late 20s. It puts you in a
Yeah.
position where you can then make choices.
Yeah.
I think if you try and make those choices before you've earned any money, it becomes very difficult because you're making a choice on a really weak foundation. You've got to build the foundations first.
I recently had a conversation with a real estate investor, and he was
Hmm.
kind of saying kind of the same thing, that like in the beginning when you're in 20s, of course, like, you kind of are focused on money because you think that money is kind of the ultimate thing. But as you progress and you start having money, then you realize what you're saying. It's like, okay, time is more important.
Hmm.
And then, your partner is, also comes to play, then your kids. Then it's like, okay, cool, now the focus shifts to different aspects. And I think that's where I am, like the my focus is shifting. And of course, like, I
Yeah,
still want to make money, but I also want to balance the time that I spend to make that money. Yeah,
absolutely. It's
it's very interesting.
all about balance, you know, and it's hard. I've found it really hard to strike that balance, you know, over the
Yeah,
last. If I think now, so I've been working for 24 years, I would say there's only been a few years that I've got the balance right. Most of the
yeah,
time, I'm just so focused on work that and building a business, for example, that I don't then carve out enough time. Luckily, my
yeah,
partner is very vocal when it comes to that, and she'll let me know very quickly if the balance
yeah.
has tipped too much one way.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's good. But also, what do you think? I think you touched on it a little bit earlier, but like, what do you think stops people from taking ownership of their finances? Right? Like, just in general, like, people are scared to even look at their bank accounts. They go out
Yeah.
on a night out and they just don't look at their bank account for a few days. But, and then in the more grand scheme of things, like, I think, yeah, people just don't take ownership of their finances.
So I think there's a few factors in this. I think one of the factors in this is social pressure, which I think is a huge problem. Again, I'll use an example from my own life. When I got
Mhm.
back as a early teenager, for example, social pressure for me was that the lads on the team, football team, they all had Predator boots and I didn't, and that was social pressure for me. You know, keeping up with the Joneses in that sort of idea. And then next minute you're at school, it's like, well, who's got the best bag, who's got the best coat with all the labels on it, and that was social pressure back in the sort of 90s. Social pressure now on with social media is just it's there every minute of every day, and it's no longer just your circle of friends that you're getting social pressure from. It's from influencers, celebrities. You know, people are almost self harming, as in like they're following people on Instagram and getting depressed by what they see. That for me is a form of self harm. You know, even though you're not touching yourself, you're making yourself mentally sort of depressed and anxious and struggling. And for me, that social pressure plays massively into choices that people make financially. So
Mm.
people make choices so they get, you know, their external gratification. So they'll go and get a car they can't quite afford, and they're doing that because it gives them the social kind of gratification that, look, I can afford this car. Ultimately, it's on finance, and they can't afford it, you know. But that is a big part of it, social pressure. And I think another part of it is that some people feel like it's not in their control. That, well, I can't
Mm.
control it. I get paid what I get paid, and the bills keep going up. What do you want me to do? You know, and
Yeah.
that sort of that element of not being in control and therefore just going, well, it is what it is. That element plays a big part in this. And a lot of the time, we'll sit with people and do a budget planner with them in a coaching session, and they won't know the numbers because they go, well, it's the numbers are what they are. You know, the gas is God knows what the gas is. That, well, get the numbers. Let's get the numbers. Let's talk through it, and we will find a way of you controlling this. If you put
Yeah.
your head in the sand, it's just going to get gradually worse and gradually worse. So it's really important. So I think social pressure and feeling in control or out of control
Yeah.
are two really big parts of it.
Yeah. No, interesting. And like, on that, right, kind of on the mental health, are there any data or patterns you see from the organizations you work with?
Hmm.
Or like, do you notice mental health issues when you work with organizations? Yeah. And when you deliver like the workshops?
Yeah, massive. I mean, there's been quite a lot of studies into this. I'll
Mm.
give you a couple of stats around sort of the connection between health and money. 37% of employees that completed a survey with one of the well-known well-being partners said that money affects them so much, like the stress of it and the thought of it, that they're not able to do their jobs properly. So 37% of people that are employed in a workplace are so stressed with finances that their job isn't being done. I mean, that's quite a big number. When you think about an office
Mm.
of, say, 200 people, that means that around 75 to 80 of those people aren't effective because they're so worried about money. That's a huge percentage. And then the other sort of number that comes out of that same study is that 81% of those people don't talk about it with their employer or a team leader, or they just don't communicate it. They don't feel comfortable communicating it. So they've got a problem, but they're just sat on it. They're not dealing with it. And that's usually where we tend to come in because we're independent. We're not their employer. It's a safe environment. People feel like they can talk about it. And that's why most of our work comes through our partnerships with, employment assistance program providers, employee wellbeing providers. We tend to be a bolt-on service to what they do because it's so intrinsically connected to mental health and your well-being.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a very interesting statistic. And it's mad to think that, like, 37% of the people don't feel
Hmm.
productive, or like, they feel stressed about their kind of finances. And then also 81% do not even speak about it with their
Hmm.
employers. That's mad. Yeah, that's crazy
Yeah.
when you think and when you put it in numbers. I do want to kind of shift, right? Because like I really also enjoy entrepreneurship. So I do have a couple of more questions and we can wrap it up here about entrepreneurship. And you're kind of like,
Okay.
as a founder and CEO of a company. So like so far, what have you learned about building a company? And then also what are some of the requirements to, build a successful business?
So, first of all, I don't think you can ever feel successful because it's just constantly on a treadmill battling problems. So, I think the first thing is you need to be good at putting fires out because
Mm.
pretty much every day there is a new fire to put out. Obviously,
Yeah.
theoretically, in terms of this isn't working, that's not working, this client's not happy with X or Y. So, every day there is some challenge or some hurdle you have to overcome. I think that's probably number one. You need to just get really good at problem solving. Luckily, I quite
Mm.
like problem solving, so I enjoy that part of it. I think number two is get ready to be quite lonely because ultimately you're not part of a machine. You're not in a
Mm.
machine of people, and you just moan with the guy next to you. You are the machine. You are the person driving this forward. And even as you bring people in, there's sort of 28 people involved in Munny right now, but even now it's quite a lonely place still if things aren't quite going the way you want them because you have to be the one that has the positivity, the vision, the power, the drive, the energy. So you can't be the one sat in the canteen moaning. That's just
Yeah.
it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
you have to be resilient, a good problem solver, really
Yeah.
positive, lots of energy. And I think that the last thing is you have to really care about what you're doing. You have to enjoy it. There is no point trying to start a business or a project with something that you half like.
Mm.
No point whatsoever because it is so hard. You have to be 100% obsessed and passionate about the topic that you're trying to get into because it's difficult and everyone out there that's trying to do it as well, they will be passionate about it. So you have to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
So that's probably how I'd sum it up. Did
Yeah.
that sound enticing or not?
I don't know. No, it sounds good to me. It sounds good to me, to be honest. Because, like, again, like I've been speaking to people. Like recently, I have had two real estate investors, and I really want to find more CEOs and founders. But, like, for example, like kind of one of them touched on resilience because, like, for example, the climate always changes, right? Like,
Hmm.
the laws and the rules and whatever. So you need to be resilient and be able to adapt, right, in the new circumstances. And also, like, the problem solving, both of them said the same thing. Like, it is about problem solving and also being passionate. Like, if you don't love what you're doing, eventually, I guess, like, you will just run out of the motivation and you will just
Absolutely,
stop.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like anything. You have to enjoy it, and
Yeah.
enjoying it's half the battle. And if you can find something that you are passionate about to the point that you want to go and do it yourself, great, go and do it.
Yeah.
But I do think you've got to make sure you're doing it based on good health. Your own
Mhm.
personal health, very important. That's why I've got a lot more focused on that this year, trying to make sure I'm healthy. Because if I'm not healthy
Yep.
and if I'm bedbound, nothing's going to happen. So
Yeah.
there's so many factors that go into it, but it's tough. It's not for the light-hearted, and resilience is definitely I would say a big part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything, before I ask you the last question, is there anything we have missed when it comes to, financial literacy, or like also, for example, like personal finance, that you believe it's important, but I have not mentioned it, or I haven't asked you something?
Um, yeah, what I would say is from a pension perspective. Let's focus on that for a second.
Yeah.
If you are in your 20s or 30s and you're sitting there going, "Oh, I've not done my pension yet. I'll do that when I'm older."
Yeah.
Act now, please act now. And the best way to start is by working out the big number. What's the big number
Mhm.
that you need in your pension pot? And there's a few different ways you can do that. You know, our app has a free pension calculator in there. You type some numbers in, it'll give you the answer. But if you want to use just basic maths, the best way to do it is go, okay, well, how much income do I want on a monthly basis when I'm retired? Which
Mm.
can be quite scary because you're thinking about I'm 65, 70. What does that look like? You know, will you be mortgage free? Will you have any debt? Will you have a car to pay for? Will you want to go on a holiday? Will it just be your bills and food? Like, what does life look like, in your retirement? Which is hard for people to picture. But let's say you've got a vision in your mind, and you go, well, actually, I think I need £1,000 a month as my income, for argument's sake. So if you want £1,000 as your retirement income per month, you times that by 300. That's called the rule of 300. So in that case, £300,000 needs to be your pension pot. And straight away, when we do that number, people go, oh my God, that's huge. But actually, full state pension right now is equivalent to around about £1,000 a month, there or thereabouts. So actually, if you qualify for full state pension, that's your pension pot, there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody goes, well, I want £2,000 a month as my retirement income, which is probably more likely than 1,000, then that's £600,000 using that same
Yeah.
rule. So instantly people panic and go, that's so big. But if you break it down and you reverse engineer the numbers and you start this in your 20s, then £50 a month going into a workplace pension gets you to that 600k altogether.
No way.
So starting early is so
Yeah.
important when it comes to your pension.
Yeah.
Time is your friend when it comes to your pension. Trust me. Starting later, even 10 years later, it can cost you so much money in the future. So
Yeah.
if there was one thing to take away that we haven't covered so far, it would be look at your pension, do the maths, reverse engineer, put a plan in place. That's the big thing to take away.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said. Like, for me, it would be, thinking about it in 65 years old,
Hmm.
£2,000 would be a better amount than £1,000, right? And when you think of like 600,000, it's like, Jesus Christ. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But as you say, like time flies. And I think like that's the important thing. I can put myself into that kind of group, but like, we think that time does not, time is
Yeah.
slow,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not.
No, no.
No.
Once you hit a certain age, it certainly speeds up. But I felt it speed up, and you start to go, "Oh no, I feel so old." So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The sooner you can start some of this stuff, the sooner you feel better about it, and you get that financial independence.
Yeah. No, 100%. Andy, where can people find you and where can people find money?
So I'm on LinkedIn pretty regularly. We've got quite an active LinkedIn presence. So my name is Andy Lang, Lang. So feel free to follow me or connect with me on there. We have a website, munnygroup.com, which is MUNNY group.com. We also have moneytech.com, which is where you'll find more info about M, the virtual money coach. But yeah, follow us and I'm sure you'll find it useful.
No, perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciated the conversation we had today.
Excellent. Thank you, Paris.
Lovely. Thank you.